And welcome everyone to November's meeting of Planning Committee A. Before we start the meeting, I've got a few housekeeping announcements to make. First of all, we don't have any planned fire alarm test today, so if you do hear the fire alarm going off, it is real. We will need to leave the room, unfortunately. I think it's very unlikely, but just in case it does happen, the way we need to leave is out through the doors where you came, back towards the main entrance of the building. There will be fire marshals on hand to direct you towards the assembly point, which is St John's Churchyard, which is about 100 metres in that direction down the road. If you've not found them yet, and you need the toilet, if you go out through these doors and take this corridor going that direction, and then turn left, you'll find the toilets at the end of that corridor. And there are also some refreshment machines outside in the public waiting area outside the room if you need food and drink, although don't ask me to operate them for you, because we all have trouble with it. So best of luck if you do try. Please, if you have got a mobile phone, can you turn it to silent, or if you're anywhere near a microphone, ideally turn it off altogether if you can bear to. This meeting is also being live streamed, and it will be shown on the council's YouTube channel. So if at any point you do address the committee, please do not disclose any information in the meeting that you would like to keep private and don't want to be in the public domain. Members of the public are also welcome to film the meeting, audio record, photograph, or post about the public proceedings of the meeting. But if you do choose to do so, and you choose to film or take any photographs, please be considerate towards every other member in the meeting and point any cameras towards top tables rather than towards other members. You're also welcome to use the council's free Wi-Fi, and there's details of that Wi-Fi address on the slide you'll see on the screen. During the meeting, members of the committee will not access the internet except as it relates to the official business of the meeting, send or receive emails, text messages, or social media posts concerning the business of the committee, and that's to ensure that any decisions that we make as a committee, all the evidence that we have is there in the public domain. I'd also like to remind speakers, first of all, to use their microphones when speaking, as that's the only way we can capture the audio, the live streaming, and please speak into the microphone. Can I also ask the audience, because this is the second time we've used these microphones this meeting, so it's still quite new as this microphone system. So if you are in the room and you can't hear what's going on, please wave at me so I can ask people to speak a bit closer to the microphones, because that was an issue at our last meeting. Please make us aware if you can't hear the proceedings. And also, if you are speaking into the microphone, it's really important not to put any mobile devices anywhere near it, because you do get terrible problems of internet. That brings us to the first item of business. First of all, have we had any apologies for the meeting? I think we've had apologies from Councillor Edwards. Thanks, Gerald. And Councillor Cumbo has very kindly agreed to advise for him. So with that, I'm going to move to confirmation of voting members. First of all, can all members of the committee who can vote raise their hand? And then I'm going to ask you each in turn to introduce yourselves. I'm going to start with Councillor Papula and then work our way down the table.
Councillor Reginald Papula, Councillor for Nunhead and Queen. Councillor Dale Councillor for North.
Councillor Esme Hicks, Councillor for Champion Hill.
Councillor Kath Whittam, Rotherhithe Ward and Vice Chair of the meeting.
Councillor Nick Johnson, Surrey Docks Ward.
Councillor Ellie Humber, Councillor in St Giles.
I'm Councillor Richard Ings, I'm Councillor in Old Kent Road Ward and chairing this meeting. I'm now going to ask officers to introduce themselves. So
Dipesh Patel, Manager Strategic Applications.
Daphne Bruce Smith, Legal Advisor to the committee.
I'm Gerald Gola, I'm the committee clerk.
Nathan Young, Team Leader, Strategic Applications.
Hello, I'm Michael Tsakaris. I'm Head of Design, Conservation and Transport.
Liam Bullen, Senior Planner, Urban Forest. I'll be presenting item 6.
Thank you. Next item is notifications of any business which the chair deems urgent. The only items I have are we've got an addendum report on the items before us today. We had sent us an addendum, also the development management report, which is a standard item of business for most meetings, but it was left out of the original papers, but it has been circulated subsequently. And then we also have the members pack, which is of the slides that we will present to us during the meeting. Disclosures of interest and dispensation. Does any member wish to declare an interest or dispensation in respect of any item or issue to be considered at this meeting? Not seeing any indications, so no interest declared. That takes us next to the minutes of the meeting that were held on the 8th of October. Are members of the committee happy those are an accurate record of that meeting? Thank you. That's agreed by committee. So that brings us on to our first substantive item, which is item 6, which is a proposed Article 4.1, direction to withdraw permitted development rights for operations within part of the Dulwich Wood conservation area, within and the adjacent to the ancient woodlands. I'm going to ask Liam Bullen to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. Members, so we've received late representation from one of the ward councillors, which I'll try to address within my presentation, but anything left over will be dealt with at the end. This report asks members to consider the approval of a non-immediate Article 4 direction to withdraw certain permitted development rights within and adjacent to the Great North Wood, to also approve consultations be undertaken for a period of 6 weeks in relation to this direction, and to note the equality, impact and needs analysis of the proposed Article 4 direction, which is located at Appendix D. Permitted development rights allow householders to undertake a broad range of works to improve, extend and alter their homes without the need to submit a planning application. The rights are subject to limitations and conditions to control impacts and protect local amenity. Similarly, certain rights have been extended to non-domestic premises. The specific operations this direction is seeking to restrict are set out in paragraph 23 of my report, and also noted on the Article 4 direction at Appendix A, and we've used very plain English to set out those operations. In a conservation area like Dulwich Wood, where the significance of the conservation area rests mainly in connection to this ancient woodland, uncontrolled development rights could potentially damage the ancient woodland, leading to irreversible harm to a feature of acknowledged importance and affecting the character and appearance and the significance of the conservation area. Ancient woodland takes hundreds of years to establish and is defined as an irreplaceable habitat. It's any area that has been wooded continuously since at least 1600. It includes ancient semi-natural woodland, mainly made up of trees and shrubs native to the site, usually arising from natural regeneration, or plantations on ancient woodland sites. They're planted with conifer or broadleaf trees that retain ancient woodland features such as undisturbed soil, ground flora, and fungi. The categorization of land as an ancient woodland does not itself provide any statutory protection. However, some features in ancient woods are protected, and sites can also be designated for their wildlife value. Development, including construction and operation activities, can affect ancient woodland, ancient and veteran trees, and the wildlife they support on the site or nearby. For ancient woodlands, a buffer zone of at least 15 metres from the boundary of the woodland is advised. That's standing advice from Natural England. In certain scenarios, this could extend a lot further. Further to this, further standing advice from Natural England is that unless there are wholly exceptional grounds and that adequate mitigation can be provided, development proposals within the buffer zone should not be approved. Officers consider the Great North Wood, comprising Sydenham Hill Woods and Dulwich Wood, to constitute irreplaceable habitat, which makes a significant contribution to the historic interest and visual impact of the area. The area affected by the proposed Article 4 directive includes domestic and non-domestic premises immediately adjacent to the extent of ancient woodland within Dulwich Wood Ward, as shown here as identified by Natural England. These have been split into sub-areas. Sub-area 1 runs the entire length of the woodland, includes public highway, woodland managed by the London Wildlife Trust and Dulwich Estate, and land on non-domestic premises, which comprise allotments and the golf course. Any works within this sub-area particularly sensitive to local wildlife and the fabric of the woodland is soils, vegetation and fauna. There are currently no outstanding applications in this sub-area. Sub-area 2, Crescentwood Road and Great Brownings, comprises mid-1960s development by the Dulwich Estate on land previously developed in the 1890s, adjacent to the woodland, and some older retained Victorian villas. Great Brownings was designed by the architects Vernon and Partners and has an active residents association. The sub-area includes the greatest density of private housing in proximity to the woodland. Light pollution, hard standing, inappropriate planting, level changes and new structures are of primary concern in this area. There are currently no outstanding applications in this sub-area. Sub-area 3, comprising 2 properties on College Road and parts of Woodhall Drive. This area again is a later development in the 1960s. It's waste development of the original Woodhall estate. Private gardens have a direct boundary with the woodland, and like sub-area 2, light pollution, hard standing, inappropriate planting, level changes of new structures are of primary concern. Many of these properties, though, have already been extended or otherwise. There are currently no outstanding applications in this. Development, including construction and operational activities, can affect ancient woodland, ancient and veteran trees and wildlife they support on the site or nearby. Buffer zones can protect ancient woodland and individual ancient and veteran trees and provide valuable habitat for woodland wildlife, such as feeding bats and birds. From these slides, you can see the type of damage that can be done where development is not controlled. Under the current GPDO, potentially damaging operations could be undertaken with direct or indirect impacts to and the loss of irreplaceable habitat prior to the submission of or during the processing of a planning application. As such, operations could be undertaken without any consideration of local natural heritage value, understanding advice from Natural England. This Article 4 direction seeks to avoid this. In effect, it requires applications to consider actively whether and how the ancient woodland may be impacted, and both its heritage and amenity contribution conserved. For example, the GPDO does not distinguish between the 4 types of ground source heat pumps commonly installed in the UK. Of these, it is the vertical ground source system which is the least damaging. An example of horizontal system and how this may impact upon the root protection of ancient woodland trees is set out in the slide before you. Officers do note that the Council fully recognises the impacts of fuel poverty and remains supportive of the aims of the NPPF and the local plan to further adaptations towards renewable energies and commitments towards net zero, whilst ensuring that these are designed and installed with due regard to the very special nature of the local irreplaceable habitat. Further, the Council also acknowledges that access requirements relating to mobility needs requiring changes in levels and hard standing could be considered wholly exceptional grounds and so likely to be acceptable subject to mitigation or method of construction. For older disabled people and disabled children and adults who may need home adaptations and additional build requirements, these would still be possible subject to any requisite mitigations which preserve the ancient woodland. And this is set out in Appendix D, the Equality Impact and Needs Analysis. An Article 4 direction can be either immediate or non-immediate, depending upon the date given within the notice as to when it is to come into force. A non-immediate direction has to follow 4 stages to be completed. Stage 1 is before you, where the Planning Committee decides under its powers to go ahead and introduce an Article 4. Stage 2 is the publication and consultation stage, where all affected properties are notified and have 21 days to make their representation. Stage 3, at the same time, is run in conjunction with this, and that's a notification to the Secretary of State, who has wide-ranging powers to amend or refute an Article 4. And finally, Stage 4 is the confirmation of an Article 4, which is again returned to the Planning Committee. In terms of the procedure, the owners and occupiers of the affected property or land do not need to be notified before an Article 4 direction is made. Following the making of an Article 4 direction, we will publish a notice of direction in the local newspaper, Southwark News, display a minimum of 2 site notices, or many in this case, for a period of not less than 6 weeks and notify the owners and occupiers of the affected properties and land. Following consultation, any further updates to the equality, impact and needs analysis, should any issues be identified, officers would return to the committee for members to consider confirmation of the direction. In summary, the use of an Article 4 would not restrict development altogether, but instead ensure that development proposals in and adjacent to ancient woodland would actively form a material consideration in determining the planning application. In short, an Article 4 does not limit the owner's ability to develop their property. It simply means that they would need planning permission to do so. Officers have sought advice from fellow senior members within the council, particularly on the point of compensation. In terms of a non-immediate Article 4, and in terms of an immediate Article 4, the compensation period runs for 1 year, and that would take into consideration any devaluation in land or refusals of a planning permission because of this. It is quite a rare occurrence, but it is something to note, and we've gone to the Strategic Director of Finance, who stated that any compensation would be dealt with within departmental revenue budgets. I would like to state that for the reasons set out within the body of the report before you, it is hereby recommended that the Article 4 direction preventing certain permitted development rights as outlined is agreed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, this isn't strictly a development management item, so we don't have the usual process in terms of objectors and supporters, etc. But I do have a ward councillor present. So I'd like, Andy, would you like to come forward and I'll allow you to raise any questions you have as a ward councillor first before we turn to other questions from the committee, if that's okay with the committee. Would you like to introduce yourself for the record?
Thanks very much. Councillor Andy Simmons, Councillor of Dulwich Wood Ward. So obviously we're very proud of our woods. It's even made it into the name of our ward, despite it not being our preferred name of our ward, but we're very, very proud of them. So at the moment, none of the residents that I'm aware of know that this is coming to committee. None of the groups that I'm aware of know that this is coming towards committee. So I am partly guessing what people will say. With briefings with officers, I've asked the question, what type of impact would this likely have on the development that people might want to do? This is an area with a good level of electric car ownership. I can imagine that ground source heat pumps are on the agenda for quite a few of the residents. Some of them can afford them, some they aren't going to put them, can't afford them. And we, I'm sure, all support the principle of ground source heat pumps and would want them wherever it is possible within the borough. So just making sure members are happy that they would allow heat pumps to be installed. I think ground source heat pumps is really important. I have a few other questions from my colleague, Councillor Catherine Rose, which I think have mainly been answered by the officer proactively, so that's really helpful. Two things I would want to ask the committee to look at with officers are consultation and the complexity of this area. So when I look at the map involves a boundary with Lewisham, and given that we are trying wherever possible to make sure that consultation and communication is effective, I would ask that Lewisham is at least notified of this. And a big omission to me is the fact that the Sydenham Hill Ridge Neighbourhood Forum, who are currently consulting on their neighbourhood plan, don't appear to be anywhere on the list. So I'm not sure why that's missing, but it should be on the list. I see that the Dulwich Estate down as under the list of addresses, but this should be a consultee on an issue of this importance. I understand completely the process that we're talking about here. But in this part of the constituency of our ward, we have both standard planning application process, which everyone goes through, and we have the Dulwich Estate scheme of management. So without compromising this consultation, I would ask that officers try to put out a sort of an FAQ that explains to residents what they can do, what they can't do. Because everyone, essentially the Dulwich Estate has a parallel planning system, have a veto unless you have both approval from the Dulwich Estate scheme and approval from the planning. You can't do anything. There's a lot of confusion about that. So just clarifying that would be really helpful. Great Brownings has 2 residents associations, so making sure that both of them would be really helpful. I think it was very helpful to have the pre-briefing. Thank you to officers for responding to Councillor Rose's questions, and I'm happy to take any questions if that's helpful.
Any members got any questions? First of all, Councillor Simmons, here. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paddy. On the surface of things, it seems a sensible step to take. I would be concerned if he ensured that residents had a reasonable amount of time patience with this, and as often happens in planning, we don't have someone very last minute saying, "I knew nothing about this," even if that has been extended for some. What would you say would be a sensible consultation period?
Thanks very much for a good question. So I think 6 weeks is okay. We have an active neighbourhood forum. It is consulting. I have lots of lists of people that are able to consult. And I think as ward councillors, we will probably use a ward forum and ask officers to come along to that, so that residents have the opportunity to engage in a little bit more of an interactive way, to ask questions rather than this is a formal consultation. In a formal planning style, you must respond to timescales, etc. So I think that's what we're likely to do. We can fit that in before Christmas, and
I think if that works for officers' diaries, that seems like a very sensible idea. Any further questions for officers from the report that anyone wants to raise? And just in terms of Andy's points about, and I think made some very good points about, on the whole, ground source heat pumps are definitely something we'd like to support, and as long as that can be done in a way that's not compromising the structure of the trees, we need to ensure that this is that they can still go forward. Are we happy that this allows that?
Yeah, it's there to build on the advice that officers can give in these situations. So the ways in which that you can actually implement development in a sensitive manner, and myself and Oliver and other design officers can definitely help with that. Should the article be adopted? I'd like to thank Councillor Simmons for his local knowledge, and we'll certainly take on board all of the other consultees that the council.
Yeah, that's really helpful,
More than
including
welcome to
Lewisham as well as Dulwich Estate.
Happy to make them aware of it, definitely.
And I think, sorry, Councillor Whittam.
Can I just ask, what are the penalties for ignoring this? Assuming that
But the benefit of consultation and direct consultation with those parties affected should mean that everyone is aware of what they can and cannot do. Certainly, infringements post confirmation of the article would be dealt with as in any other planning enforcement. What we'd like to do, obviously, is to guide people and to guide them so that they are fully aware of what the requirements are and what the impacts are, so that when we do receive submissions, that they do take everything into account.
just for the sake of clarity, and Article 4 is placed on the property register of the property. So they might, that would be in perpetuity. So they would, not just the current owners who, subsequent owners would be aware of those Article 4s. We have Article 4s on a number of properties across the borough. They go into the property register.
Yes, because the site is a conservation area, any works that would damage trees. So if a landowner were to take up their GPDO rights, they could inadvertently damage a tree. So the enforcement powers would still be the same as to whether they would do it under GPDO or through planning.
Thank you. And Councillor Simmons made the interesting point about this sort of dual planning process here that we have with both the Dulwich Estate and the council for applications. In terms of people making an application, is there just a one point they need to make it through? Do we share any applications with the Dulwich Estate, or do they need to make separate applications to both bodies?
Yeah, the scheme of management is very separate from the policies, considerations and remit of the local planning authority. So their rights lie in the Common Hold and Leasehold Reform Act. Whilst we have similar interests in preserving, conserving the setting character of the conservation area, which they too do, we come from it from a different standpoint.
Does that mean that if they want to make an application, they only have to make it to us? That I understand.
No, residents make applications under the terms of their lease, regardless of whether they're freeholders or not, to the Dulwich Estate, who have a separate committee that deals with development. But in terms of receiving a planning consent, then that needs to go to the local planning authority.
So just for the sake of clarity, yes, they have to apply twice. They have to apply once to the Dulwich Estate and once to the council to get their development.
They might have had to apply once previously anyway to the Dulwich Estate, if not to the council.
No, they always had to.
No, I mean,
sorry.
Yes, you're right. If their rights have been
yes.
removed, they may already have had to apply to the Dulwich Estate in any case for those works.
Yes, exactly. So, Councillor Rose asked the question about what we reported to you are that there's no affected applications, planning applications in the areas that that are affected as the sub areas as identified, but we're not in control of the application to the Dulwich Estate. So we're hoping and we're anticipating that when we consult with the Dulwich Estate, they'll be looking at their records as well about potential applications that might be affected that we haven't been in receipt of in the area.
Thank you. And the other question I had is there seems to be you talked about this 15-metre buffer zone, which stretches part the way along the edge, but not all the way along the edge. Is there a reason why the bit between, I think it's Packerman's walk and Cox's walk is omitted? Is there a reason for that? I mean, I'm not as familiar as officers and Councillor Simmons would be of the geography there, but I just understand that.
It's because of the road. So in that picture behind you or side of you, you can see this road which runs along. It provides a significant
Buffer of its own.
Buffer in its own right to development. There is a maintained verge by the Dulwich Estate, and along this road you also get the front of properties rather than the rear of properties. There's nothing actually backing on there. The other shortened buffer zone is with the with Sydenham Hill itself being quite a major road.
That's very helpful. Any further questions on this item? Councillor Cumbo.
Thanks, Chair. Just to query the point about no outstanding applications, that might be us getting very lucky. Is there anything you can say about the general rate of application?
Yeah, we've had one recently at Great Brownings. We've had a couple at Woodhall Drive. We do receive pre-works applications all the time, but in terms of development, and obviously within the woodland itself was the Cox's Walk, the renovation of the footbridge there.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Given this currently, damaging work could be prior to a planning application, given that no residents know there's an Article 4, something goes ahead between now and an article being implemented, will they be forced to undo the work, or will they be allowed to keep it even though it will be, once completed, in contravention of the
Works implemented or completed before the making of the Article 4 are permitted development. In terms of our relationship with Dulwich Estate Scheme of Management, I have very close contacts with their new tree consultant, and so that person would also be consulted on scheme of management applications, and we have a weekly talk anyway on matters arising at within the estate.
Yes. But just to follow up on that, any damage to trees within the conservation area is unlawful and will be can be subject to with or without permitted development.
Thank you. Anyone? I'm not seeing any further questions. So on that basis, I'd like to ask that the Planning Committee approves the non-immediate Article 4 direction as set out in Appendix A to withdraw the permitted development right granted by the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development England Order 2015 as amended, hereafter known as the GPDO. Secondly, approves consultations be undertaken for a period of 6 weeks in relation to non-immediate Article 4 direction. Thirdly, notes the equality impact and needs analysis of proposed Article 4 direction set out in Appendix D. And does any member of the committee wish to second this? Councillor Whittam. So all those members in favour, I'm going to ask you in turn. Councillor Whittam.
For Chair.
Councillor Cumbo.
For Chair.
Councillor Hicks.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For, Chair.
Councillor Merrill.
For, Chair.
Councillor Papula.
For, Chair.
And Councillor Richard Livingstone, I'm voting for that as well. So that is carried. And so that goes forward to consultation. Thank you, everybody. Brings that item to a close. That brings us on to development management. I'm assuming the committee are happy to carry on without a break at this stage. Yes. Next item of business concerns the determination of planning applications. So I would like to remind everyone on the committee of the guidance on how we conduct our business here. First of all, officers will present the report, outline their recommendations and answer any questions raised by the committee. Then, if present and wishing to speak, the following may then address the committee for no more than 3 minutes each. Firstly, a spokesperson representing any objectors to the application. By now, the objectors need to have either identified a single spokesperson, or if more than one objector wishes to speak, worked out how to divide that 3 minute time slot between you. Secondly, the applicant or their agent. Thirdly, a spokesperson representing any supporters of the application who live within 100 metres of the development site. And fourthly, a ward councillor representing the area affected by the proposal. So ward members in attendance and those nominated to speak on behalf of objectors, supporters or applicants should sit as far forward in the room as they can. That's particularly important for the applicants because we may have follow-up questions later on proceedings, it's useful to be able to discuss with you. However, it's not an opportunity for those people to take part in the proceedings and other than making their representation. Each speaker should restrict their comments to the planning aspects of the proposal and should avoid repeating information which is already in the report. The meeting is not a hearing where all the participants present evidence that can be then cross-examined by other participants. At the end of each representation, the committee may ask questions of the presenter. Speakers should lead the committee to subjects in which they would welcome further questioning. That's particularly important if you don't think 3 minutes is enough time. It's useful to flag up any issues which you would want us to ask any further questions on. After receiving all the submissions, the committee will debate the application and consider the recommendation. This is a council committee meeting rather than a public meeting, although it is open to the public, but please no interruptions from the audience. And finally, I'd like everyone present to know that although this planning committee comprises of elected members from different political parties, we are not politically whipped, and we make our decisions entirely on the basis of the council's planning policy. Our decisions are made in accordance with that policy and based on information contained within the relevant reports, together with the consultation responses and any verbal submissions. How we approach these applications is as set out in the Development Management Report that's been circulated as an addendum. And if members are happy to note the report, we'll move on to considering the planning applications. Is that agreed? Agreed. Councillor Merrill, I saw you indicate.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I apologise now, but I saw this coming up thing on the wall councillor for the area and would like to speak as a wall councillor from this. I should have said that.
That is fine. I understand your reasons as well for the late notifications. That's very helpful. Yes, if you could go to sit in the public area and I will call you to speak as a ward councillor. Just so that everybody's aware of the process, I will ask the ward councillor after he's given his representation, ask any questions on that to withdraw from the meeting. That's a standard process that we carry out for committee members so that everyone's clear that that member, as a member of the committee, doesn't have undue influence on the rest of it. Thank you. That brings us to item 7.1, Chatelain House at 182 to 202 Walworth Road, London, SE17. That's set out in pages 81 to 191 of the main agenda pack, and also on pages 1 to 3 of the addendum report. And I'm going to ask Nathan Young to present on this item.
Thank you, Chair. Chatelain House, a new mixed-use development in the north end of Walworth Road, comprising student housing, 283 units, affordable housing, 23 units, and a new commercial retail space, a new community space, and a new public courtyard. This is a summary of the consultation responses we received. 15 in support, focused on bringing use to the underutilised land, the new social rent homes, revitalising the high street, as the existing building is largely vacant. Student housing can bring spending commerce to the area. So on 29 objection, focused mostly on height massing, light, and a few comments on parking ban and noise, as you can see on the slide. The applicant themselves carried out their own extensive public consultation exercise. They had a dialogue with a wide range of local groups. You can see on the right side of the slide some of the groups that they were in contact with. They had a number of in-person public consultation events over different dates. Quite well attended, 134 in total. Also circulated many flyers and did door knocking exercise on local businesses and homes. Feedback was mostly in support of the development. There was recognition that the existing building is an eyesore in its existing form, massively underutilised with only the McDonald's in operation. Ground floor. Significant support for it, the new public courtyard garden at the heart of the scheme, introducing new greening and pedestrian routes in the area. There was concerns raised about the antisocial behaviour, specifically focused around the entrance to McDonald's, and there was support around the affordable housing and the new community space that was to come in too. This is the site scenario view looking northwest. It's outlined in red. It has a main front wing facing Walworth Road and two smaller wings facing Manor Place and Amelia Street. Notable surrounding buildings on the corner just north of the site is Pancard Public House. Just next to that, the white brick buildings 2 to 6 Amelia Street. This is where the bulk of the objections come from. And then there's the larger buildings next to the railway lines. The dark one is known as the Works building. Then also there is the police station just below the site. Here's another aerial view. This is looking southwest. This sort of better captures the height of the main buildings, relationship with the proposed development. You see 2 to 6 Amelia Street rising up to 7 stories in height, and Southwark building, the dark one, goes up to 9. And gives an idea of the context that the proposed development would fit within. Another context shot northwest towards Elephant Castle, right at the top end of Walworth Road, sorry, and see how development builds up towards the Elephant and Castle town centre, and the development will form part of this emerging context. It's worth noting it is in the central activity zone and part of the Elephant and Castle town centre policy designation. It's not itself in a conservation area, but is in close proximity to the Walworth Road conservation area. Here's a photo of the front of the building. That is the McDonald's on the ground floor that is in use. All the other units are vacant, upper floors and ground floor. There are a lot of delivery bikes that like to park in front of that building. I think that was one of the concerns raised by residents. This is to the rear. It is a private hard surface car park. It's not accessible to the public. Greenery. This is inside the building, the upper floors. It's very much underutilized, the site. It's been vacant for over 12 years. I think it was former council offices, and is not fit for use as it stands. This is a CGI of the previous consent on the site. This was granted in 2015. Compared to the current proposal, it has a worse public benefit package, has less affordable housing, it's less sustainable, involves full demolition. The new proposal is considered to better optimise the site in accordance with good growth policies. Building you see here, it ranges from 5 to 6 stories. The front block reads as 4 stories with a recessed fifth, and the Amelia Street blocks to the right side of the image reads as 5 stories with a recessed sixth. This is the proposed development. It ranges from 6 to 7 stories, adding an additional story across the board. Although in short to medium views on Walworth Road, like in the image, It can largely read as 4 stories with a recessed fifth, as shown in the image. This is a front elevation image here. So when viewed from the front, it can be seen as 4 stories with 2 recessed stories above, bookended with 2 outdoor terrace areas framed in brickwork. Note the double height entrance in the centre to the new public courtyard, the extra height signpost, the new space from longer views along Walworth Road. Also note the chamfered corner unit in the bottom right of the image, giving extra space to people waiting for the bus stop. There's a better view of that later on in the presentation. Efforts were made during the pre-app process to reduce the height and soften the massing, particularly of the Walworth Road Amelia Street corner. There was some concern on how the proposed development would impact the Tankard Pub, a locally listed building, not grade listed. This impact on its significance has been kept to a minimum without compromising other offerings of the scheme as a whole. An important bonus of this scheme over the previous is the retention of the existing front wing, resulting in a 21% saving up front in embodied carbon. And also through efficient design practices, particularly through incorporating cycle parking into the more active parts of development, there is no need for a basement, further saving carbon. Here is an image, ground floor diagram, sets out the different uses of the scheme. You'll see there are 2 entrances into the new public courtyard at the heart of the scheme. New commercial units fronting Walworth Road, activating Walworth Road, and there are private amenity space for the affordable housing block. That is towards the right side of the image. So there is the entrance, residential entrance, the cycle store, general plant, blue badge parking on site, and then just to the rear of it is its own dedicated outdoor space, along with balconies above, which we'll see later. The sort of orangey coloured part is the new community space. We'll talk more about that later, but you'll see an entrance from Walworth Road and Manor Place, and it opens out onto the new courtyards. Throughout the scheme, they've been deliberately trying to increase passive surveillance, be able to see straight through into the courtyard from all the units, from the entrances and windows above. This will discourage antisocial behaviour in the courtyard. It will also be managed and closed during nighttime hours. This is a typical upper floor plan. The brown coloured area is the affordable housing. It is entirely separate block from the student housing. There's no internal access between them. The blue units are the student studios facing outwards, and the red units are the cluster flat bedrooms facing inwards towards the courtyard. They share the yellow living kitchen areas, and the orange spaces are communal amenity spaces for all students. This is the rear elevation of the affordable housing block. All the windows in this picture are south facing. All units have private balconies and access to a private ground floor amenity space. And that amenity space also includes 80 square meters of play space. The affordable housing block is typically arranged with 4 units per floor around a central stair core, two cores provided to meet fire safety regs. 3-bedroom family units on the outside with the 10 square meter balconies. Smaller units have 6 square meter balconies, which meet London Plan standards. Any shortfall in private amenity is considered to be compensated by the size of the ground floor amenity space, which is only accessible to people housing residents. It does not form part of the public courtyard. Here's an image of the courtyard. Plenty of seating space, a clear walkway through, one entrance and out the other. In the foreground there is some on-the-way play, and also you can see much passive surveillance there is also. Here's a general landscaping plan that maximised green roofing across the site. 1249 green roof. 22 new trees to be planted in the courtyard and the affordable housing amenity space. One street tree has to be removed. You'll see towards the bottom of the image the sort of red outline of a tree. This is to make way for a crossover into the servicing delivery bay. The applicant has agreed to pay 16.3k to mitigate this loss. It was carefully positioned to ensure retention of the higher category street trees just nearby. Also, it's worth noting the urban greening factor has a rating of 0.472, above the required amount, and a biodiversity net gain of 100 significant gain. Here is a CGI of the new communal space. The vision is for a communal space for cooking and eating to bring together existing communities and the student residents. Tackling loneliness, supporting access to healthy, fairly priced food, and providing a platform for local food businesses and cooks from marginalised backgrounds. The applicant is working with local community organisation known as Pembroke House, who I believe is in attendance tonight, and may comment further on the plans for this space. Image looking at the Warwick Road entrance of the same space. Here is the massing image of the existing building. This is the consented scheme, not the proposed one. This is the 2015 scheme. It's important to note that this was consented and implemented before 2 to 6 Amelia Street was built, just on the sort of north of the northwest of the block there. And this is the proposed massing current scheme. So on the Amelia Street side, you'll see the max height goes from 23.3 meters to 28 meters, 4.7 increase. This table compares the daylight sunlight, or the first of all, the VSC stats between the proposed development and the consented development. The point of this is to show that it does not result in a significant detrimental impact beyond what was established as acceptable under the consented scheme, which is extant. Only 2 windows in 2 to 6 Amelia Street result in a reduction less than 0.7 times what it was under the consented scheme, which was built with, and Amelia Street was built with the consented scheme in mind. This is a picture of the front of 2 to 6 Amelia Street. Most of the low levels of VSE are caused by the presence of balconies and recessed terraces and overhangs. The majority of the windows, 25 out of 40, will retain VSE levels above 20%, and all 40 windows will retain levels of VSE above 13.3 if the balconies, recesses, and overhangs are not present. So it's important to take that into consideration. It will always be relatively low given how far recessed certain parts are into the building. During the course of the application, there was an amendment. After meetings with concerned residents, the applicant has amended the application to provide more greening along the Amelia Street facade. See in the next slide. Views as if you were stood inside 2 to 6 Amelia Street from the third floor looking at the proposed development. This view out gives you a feel for the separation distance between the buildings and the scale of development in the eyes of 2 to 6 Amelia Street. See the bit of greening that's been added there. Well, summary. We developed some of these brownfield sites, 23 affordable homes, all social rents, 283 new student bedrooms, which frees up a lot of conventional residential units in the housing stock, a new public courtyard, 580 square metres, and then through the site, a new community space, park retention of the existing structure, new commercial business service units, activating frontages, good landscaping plan, good child play space, bill payment. There is minor harm to the locally listed town car hub, but that is considered to be outweighed by the public benefits, and harm has been minimised during the pre-out process. Daylight sunlight impact is considered acceptable. The impact beyond the consented scheme not considered significant, and all windows within the street development would contain VSE above 30.3 mid-teens, which is acceptable guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Questions from members of the committee? Councillor Whittam.
Yeah, I've been looking at the play space. You've got on the summary 87 square metres. In paragraph 118, it says 80 square metres.
Yeah, there's 80 in the affordable housing block, and there's 7 in the public.
And it requires a payment of 33,975.
I believe so.
So what is the shortfall, and which age group is that?
I don't have the shortfall in square meters.
Yeah.
I don't have the hand. Come back on that.
If
What
we could
age
pick
group?
that up, that would be very helpful, I think. Thank you. Yeah, maybe check with the applicants on page 3. Just on public space, it's a fairly minor point. Hoping it purposes only, but on slide 28, which showed social housing floor. I noted that it did appear. So yeah, it's the balcony space of these 2 blocks. If you look at the northern 2, at least the most 2, they seem to be the 1-bedroom place seem to have a far bigger balcony than the 3-bedroom. Whereas the other end, it seemed to be checking that. It does seem a bit odd to give 1-bedroom that considered space than 3-bedroom factor. Looks as if it hands if you move. So it may well be it's just for illustrative reasons. I just wanted to check there wasn't a clear planning reason why it'd be done that way round.
No, it was my understanding it was the larger blocks of the 10 square meters. So perhaps the applicant can.
Yeah, I hope that's a straightforward thing to clear up. That's not too. The other question I wanted to ask was just on how the quantum of affordable housing was calculated. I know there is a formula for how you convert student population into checking on that, because the report says how the affordable housing has been divided up, but it doesn't say quite how the calculation was reached.
Okay.
So we know we're getting 35% of base here.
Yes, I think 2.5 student units is the equivalent to 1 conventional unit. Thank you, Chair. So it is calculated on the number of 35% of the student rooms. So 35% of 283 student rooms was just over 100. So yeah, habitable rooms. Yeah. So and we can get the number. It's no.
Thank you. Yes. It wasn't clear in the report. That's helpful. Any other questions from committee members? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Once we get a better understanding of the BSC, so it says there are 14 windows on a which fall below BRE time. Do we know what the rooms are behind those windows? I.e., are the kitchens, bedrooms, living reception rooms?
I believe the living spaces are pushed towards the front, and they going onto those recessed balconies that you see. I think an important point to make is that the windows that fail often serve the same room as a window that passes in the same elevation. So that room is. Oh yes, sorry.
Nathaniel, I don't suppose there's a way of looking at those numbers by number of rooms affected rather than windows.
I imagine there could be, but I don't have that to hand again. Sorry. So the VSCs, the lower VSCs, are mostly on the ground floor, as you can see behind those recesses. So most of those are living areas because they've got defensible space behind them. Some of the on the level above, there are bedrooms that are affected as well, but it's mostly the living areas with the lower VSCs, which start from a low starting point, as you can see, because of those overhangs. So that small absolute reduction, 1 or 2%, results in a greater proportion of the BRE value.
Any further questions from members? In that case, I'd like to ask, that brings us to the representation section. Is there anybody present who wishes to speak in objection to this section? Who would you like forward to this? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody indicating they wish to speak in objection to the application. In that case, would the applicant or the applicant's agent like to come forward? Just to run you through what I'm going to do is, first of all, I allow you to very briefly introduce yourself, so just name and where you're from, and then I'll give you 3 minutes to make your presentation to committee.
Thank you very much. I'm Debbie Whitfield. I'm Director of Regeneration and Impact at the Development Company.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. So our intention here is to unlock a site that's been largely empty and derelict with a scheme that puts Woolworth's diverse community back at its heart. And at the same time demonstrating that student accommodation can do something just serve the student population, but actually meaningfully address and respond to people, and at the same time support students and other new residents to become active and productive members. We're proposing to dramatically model the building to turn what's currently an unloved eyesore into a positive contributor to the high street, centred on community, food and nature. Central to that is the giving over of almost the entire ground floor to community and public facing uses. So as we've heard, public courtyard garden, turning what's currently a closed off service yard into a pocket of garden to provide green respite from the busy high street, a new pedestrian route transforming the permeability of the site with welcoming new entrances lined with tactile brick, new high street shops to helping to drive footfall back to the section of high street, and a new community kitchen delivered in partnership with Pembroke House, the local charity. So this new high street community space will use the power of food to bridge the area's existing diverse communities, development of new residents, using the preparation of food and coming together to eat, to tackle social isolation, connect young and old, and provide access to healthy, fairly priced food. And just as importantly, providing professional kitchen space to emerging local food businesses, particularly those from marginalised communities. We're also delivering 35% on-site affordable homes, all of which will now be social rent. And critically, we already have agreement in place with Pension Insurance Contribution Corporation to be the registered provider. Our plans also have the natural environment at their centre, so we're reusing the building, saving the equivalent of 115 return flights between London and New York in carbon. Air source heat pumps and extensive rooftop PVs will significantly reduce energy demand for operational costs for residents, and we're reintroducing nature on a very significant scale. So with 2 new gardens, 22 new trees, and enough green and blue roofs to cover an Olympics. We've got to this point through the input and support of the local community. So organisations you'll be very familiar with, such as the War Society, who are here tonight, whose input has been absolutely invaluable. But we've also worked really hard to build links with these groups who aren't always easy to reach. So volunteering with the likes of Inspire and the Woolworth Oldies to ensure we're hearing from the young and the old as well. And what they've told us and the relationships we've built for the long term and fed directly into our plans throughout the entire process, even before we actually appointed a design team, and our proposals are all the better for it. I'd like to take this opportunity to extend a huge thank you to all those people who have been a part of this process, and just to flag that a number of members of our project team are here. And
thank you. Thank you very much. Questions from committee to the applicant? I'm going to kick off. So first of all, thank you very much for coming along. Thank you for your presentation. Just to pick up on that question I raised earlier about the balconies, just to check that that's something that could easily be fixed.
I'm pretty sure, I'll double check with our architect who's in the room, but I'm pretty sure that's just a mistake on the plan. So it's absolutely 10 square metres that go with the 2 and 3, so the 3-bedroom apartments and 6 square metres. So small.
Thank you. Councillor Whitton.
Can you shed any light on the shortfall in play?
Yes, it's not a very large amount. I don't know if we've got the exact figure yet.
Sorry, would you like to come forward perhaps and speak into the microphone? So thank you. Yeah. I'll just quickly ask your name and where you're.
I'm Jennifer from House Architect. The shortfall in play space, as in that, is all the children. The play space we are providing on site is 5 and under. Payment on top. I don't have the area.
You know what the child yield is?
Hoping some officers beavering away as we speak, trying to dig that out for committee so that we can have that answer before we take a decision. Raised it earlier. Thank you very much. Councillor Pula.
Chair. I've got 2 quick questions, if that's all right. The first one is, of course, the location of the proposed development is, of course, on a significant main road. I just wanted application and I guess a level of reassurance that during the construction phase, that the impact of the construction is minimised as much as possible. If you could shed further light on that. And I know that there's a construction already at hand, but it'll be if, of course, you could speak to that further and what you've done to endeavour to ensure that the impact is as minimal as possible. My next question is, of course, it's great to hear that there will be a kitchen there, but I can't necessarily see here in the pack as to the longevity with regards to your relationship with Pembroke House. What is that, a 5-year lease? Is it a long license? What's their security in that space? If you could shed light on that, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. So firstly, in terms of minimising construction disruption, absolutely, we do have a construction management plan in place, and that will be worked up in much more detail once we have the contractor on board as well. Obviously, there's the advantage to bear in mind of the fact that disruption will be minimised, being just virtue of the fact that we aren't demolishing the entire building and not digging a basement. And also that plan will be based on ensuring that servicing is definitely from the side streets, so Manor Place and the street, rather than the Walworth Road. So we're managing that really carefully, making sure there's enough space to give the breathing room necessary for the bus stop on that busy corner of Manor Place and Walworth Road, for example. That would absolutely be worked up in much more detail with our contractor once they're on board. And then in relation to your second question, we're having a very sort of long-standing dialogue with Pembroke House, which has been incredibly supportive. We're very close to being heads of terms with them on the management of the space and how that's going to work between us. But essentially, we're going to be working to a 25-year lease on a peppercorn rent. And we will also be funding a large proportion, if not all, of the fit-out costs for that space as well. So yeah, that's a very kind of collaborative process, working very much in partnership with Pembroke House.
I'm going to go to Councillor Cumbo, but I'm going to give you another chance later, Councillor Boo.
I just had a question about the design review panel and its comments, specifically with regard to the use, size and access courtyard. The report we've received says these issues were addressed, but I wasn't clear on exactly what was meant by access. Any more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There was various elements of feedback from the design review panel. Surprisingly, one of the elements of feedback was around concerns as to whether or not that space should actually just be for the students rather than for the local community. We felt very strongly that it should be absolutely for the local community rather than just for the student residents. And that's something that we've had, really positive dialogue with officers on throughout the process as well, who've been very supportive, as well as, absolutely, the local community have been incredibly about that throughout the entire engagement process. So that wasn't something that we wanted to take very seriously. So we took that advice back to the local community in our second series of consultation events, which was in October 2023. It had a very resounding level of support from everyone, the local community, to keep that space open to the public. The changes that were made in response to the feedback from DRP involved the widening of the routes, those public routes through from Walworth Road and Amelia Street, and ensuring kind of the sight lines showed you that you were walking into a space that was green and welcoming. So they were, I think, memory, the core changes that we made in response to that feedback. And yeah, it's been something that's absolutely essential to our concept for the scheme day one, and that has had a huge amount of support locally.
Thank you. Councillor Pooley had a follow-up question.
Yes, Jeff. Cheers for that. My next two questions are about, of course, noted on paragraph 200, and further on, of course, it's noted the introduction of bike zones, but further on, of course, it notes that of course, the development fall short in terms of those numbers. It'd be great if you could why that is the case. And speaking about the council's revolutionary policy policy in terms of cargo bike space. I can't necessarily see anything in the report of the development in terms of allowing space for cargo bikes, especially because that in Oakham Road, massive development there, and they are introducing cargo bikes. It is going to increase and become a way of life in Borough. So it's great if you could possibly accept and that there is provisions for cargo bikes.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, incorporating the bike parking is something that we've taken very seriously now. Travel is something that is developing with manage sustainability. The evidence, however, does show that the quantum of bike parking in other similar schemes, PBSA schemes in the local area across London, are incredibly underutilized. So we've done some research into sort of the underutilization of those bike parking areas, and so there's been a sort of a very healthy dialogue with transport officers on getting to a level that they're comfortable with and that work well for the government itself. A big driver has been about trying to ensure active frontages to as many of the street level facades as possible, and rather than those frontages with bike parking, something that we want to have there when that passive surveillance approach is so important to the feeling of safety in that really piece of structure through the courtyard garden. Cargo bikes is a really interesting one. It's not something that I'm aware of that's in the pre-act process, but definitely something that we can take away and look at how we incorporate that in. I guess it's not the policy that you referred to isn't something that I've seen personally. So it'd be interesting to know what sort of demographic is expected to be using these sorts of bikes most. I imagine it's not students, but it could well be the affordable homes. So that's definitely something that we'll take away. We do have that front well.
Again, if you could just very briefly introduce yourself and.
Thank you. Hi, I'm David Pearce from Calpar Associates. We're the transport consultant. So in terms of cargo bikes, we do have servicing yard that can be used for deliveries, which I presume is what you're referring to the use of cargo bikes in that scenario. We also do have oversized cycle parking spaces within both the affordable residential cycle store and within the student cycle store. And they've been designed with the fact that they could be used by cargo bikes, but they could also be used by non-standard bicycles as well.
It's probably just also worth adding there's still a very significant number of bike parking spaces. So I think 276 spaces in total, so 190 long stay for the student residential and 78 long stay for the affordable homes, plus I think something like 8 spaces as well. So it's still a significant number.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Were the scheme to be approved, one of your neighbours, of course, would be quite a major, which I believe also has Southwark's only custody suite. It operates in quite a tight environment. Have they been consulted about the construction management plan? I could imagine a scenario where perhaps Manor Place or Amelia Street were closed. That would have for the police station, particularly if they were trying to take people in and out of custody at the time.
Thank you very much. I mean, we've been consulting quite extensively with the police station throughout the process. In fact, they had a number of elements of feedback that we responded to and actually made amendments to the actual physical scheme. In terms of the construction management plan, I'm not sure to what extent we've got a colleague who will.
Hi, sorry, Paul Hicks, also from Fabrics. So yeah, as Debbie was saying, we've consulted quite a police station and have agreed with them effectively the way in which that shared wall. There is a wall obviously between us. It's about a single plan there. So that wall runs along their edge and a yard. area. So we have agreed with them the process of how that will be handled, what temporary measure would be in place, and the other space, obviously, that's their biggest concern. I'd also probably say in terms of the design of that elevation and that site, risk of a single story roofs that you see there, so there's protection in place. Yeah, I'm sure there's been dialogue with the design and construction aspect.
And when thinking about the construction management plan, are they also aware of if it was to be aired, when roads are likely to be closed, how long they're likely to be for, and just accessibility in and out? Let's say if Amelia Street was closed and Manor Place was at the same time.
Yeah, thank you. As you say, we're not quite at that stage yet in terms of knowing timeframes that they would be closed for, but definitely would be in close consultation with them. Servicing, primary servicing that we're anticipating currently, again, we don't have a contractor on board yet, but we have been talking to contractors to inform the construction management plan. We anticipate that being from Amelia Street as opposed to Manor Place. I think that would come into our thinking in terms of how we'd manage the full entrance to that.
I'm just going to very quickly add on that whilst you are here. In a past life as a cabinet member who introduced the low traffic neighbourhood around there, it was very popular with many local residents. I know there were some residents that weren't so happy about it, and obviously that relies on street and Manor Place for access to certain streets, so make sure that's properly considered as part of the construction plan. But don't blame me for that as well as for what I do with the LTN if we were to approve this application. So yeah, please do look into that impact in particular, because it does mean that access to various, not only those streets, but various streets behind there is. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you. I just have a question regarding the courtyard. So I noticed from the feedback from the design review panel and the design work that's gone into this and the guidance earlier. Just wondered if any consideration would be given in terms of pedestrian primary priority being for pedestrians. How do you avoid through the design work there the situation where maybe cyclists are using that, or were still no peds through that area?
Sure. I mean, accessibility generally is something that's very seriously throughout, and the design of the actual pathways and planting in the courtyard has absolutely taken that issue into account. Line bikes and electric bikes generally, we know, is a big issue in the local area, particularly as Nathan mentioned around the outside of McDonald's. So that's something that we will, as we back up with visual design, be taking very seriously in terms of also gate access to that space. Well, it won't be gated during the day; it will be gated at night, which is an area that we've had very strong feedback from the local community on. So just thinking about how we can design those routes through to ensure that actually, whilst they're still very welcoming and sort of civic in scale, that they don't allow line bikes or anything else to clear through, because that's something that really.
That's all right. Been mentioned, yeah, but just to point out that the student kind of reception and entrance is on the right hand side of the passageway going from Walworth Road into the courtyard. That will have 24/7 security within there, and so a lot of thought's gone into the design of that elevation and the way that the windows have visibility overlooking space. So in terms of the management of that courtyard, the intention is that that's done by the security of the student operator. That'll be a 24/7 space, and as Debbie said, closed.
Thank you. Any further questions from committee? I'm going to ask one question. You've spoken very laudably about the healthy eating aspects of this proposal. So I'm going to ask a slightly odd question, but I know it is something that some local people will ask, is the fate of McDonald's.
Yeah, and yeah, this has come up a couple of times. So the current status of that is that we have had dialogue with McDonald's about the process. We shared plans with them go in, and currently it's not finalised in terms of whether the new space will work for them or not. You know, we haven't that. The size, servicing, probably considerations that they're taking away about. So
it's a maybe.
We've certainly made it very clear saying on Southwark Road, the priority, whether site location.
For those people that are less healthy eating, the aims of this project will still hopefully have some.
That's a bit. It's safe to say that through the engagement process, nobody, but maybe like 99% of people that
I think that's it for questions. Thank you very much. If you'd like to return to public seating areas, as I said, if you could stay near the front row in case there is anything further that comes up, that'd be very helpful. But thank you very much for your presentation and the answers given. Next is, do we have any supporters of the scheme that live within 100 night? Do you want to come forward? I was advised that you might live just slightly beyond that, but I think it's about 120 metres, somebody said. So I think on that basis, I'm willing to be slightly flexible to allow you to address the meeting. Thank you. So if you'd just like to give your name and let us know which street you live on, but you don't need to give your full address. And then I'll give you 3 minutes. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
I'd like to read out a short statement. I have lived in Southwark for 43 years, and the last 5 years living on the new development on the place SE17 since it was erected in 2019, and will be in close proximity to where the Chaplin House development will potentially be located. I'm a member of the Residents Association on Manor Place and also attend the Safer Neighbourhood meetings and volunteer with our local police in support of local events such as bike marking and safety awareness. Chaplin House development came to my attention when a consultation was set up for locals, the building designs and development plans. It's at this time I was introduced to Debbie. Debbie captured my attention immediately as she was very passionate about the future of the Walk Road. She introduced me to the architect and they both talked me through the design and layout and what they wanted to achieve. It was at this time I did notice a few minor issues that I raised, such as the public walkthrough being open 24 hours a day and residents not having their own green space. 1 out of the 2 outdoor spaces should be for residents. I also put Debbie in touch with our local police Safer Neighbourhood team, whom she contacted and did a walk around of the area and their perspective on safety and security and what she could do to maximise the development and green space potential for the local community. At the next consultation, I was excited to see that all the feedback, whether positive or negative, by local residents and business owners were listened to and changes and adjustments were made accordingly. And architect drawings were updated so locals could see visually what the development would look like. I'm in support of this development going ahead as I feel this will bring more people to the Wharf Road and keep the area looking. In Southwark, we are in need of more housing. This development will contain 23 affordable homes, which will also include adapted. All will be social rented, plus extra section for a student accommodation. It will include spaces for shops, which we need on the Wharf Road, and will give opportunities for existing business owners to expand and grow and budding new entrepreneurs to set up new businesses, as we have a lot of talent within our borough. There will also be a building scheme with a community kitchen working with Pembroke House. This will be a great for community bonding and locals coming together through cooking. Also learning to cook and taste foods from across the world made by locals and ingredients sourced locally. Grounds of the development will have 22 trees and grass areas, as well as seating areas for residents and public to enjoy and come together. Green space is incredibly important. Not only does it improve the general appearance of a building, but also brings friends and family together and outdoors, which can make a huge positive impact on mental health. And finally, I would like to mention the fact that the original structure of the building will remain and not be demolished. Not only is this great for our environment, but also keeping with the original structure, which is a part of the Walworth Road history. This will also keep disruption to local residents and businesses minimal in the surrounding area while the building work is taking place. I would like the panel to please take my comments into consideration when.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing any questions, but thank you very much for going to present to us. It's always good to hear the views of local communities. That brings us to ward councillors. Councillor Merrill. Okay, I'm going to take it as read that we know who you are, so I'll give you 3 minutes. 3 minutes to address.
Well, I just wanted to come up, and I can't really beat what this said there. She's basically everything I want to say here. I've been representing the area for about 14 years, and this particular patch of the Wall Road has been a blight that long. Empty, got McDonald's on the own issues with bikes, etc. I think it's just been a site that has always been talked about and almost got developed, but never quite got there. Now, this is a huge improvement on what the consented application is. It helps the environment, climate emergency, lots of questions about that, proper affordable housing in it, green space, children's play area. This goes on the improvements from the incentive scheme this has. Not that it doesn't have its problems, Amelia Street and some of the light issues and the light overshadowing issues. But I think the developers try to mitigate that as best as they possibly could for a central London main road area, arterial road, and we can get the maximum of what we can out of these elements as well. So it's on a P-tail rating of 6 in the area, so it's well connected. I do have concerns about student accommodation in Southwark as a whole, but where would you want them to be, on the main high street or in an actual residential area? So I'm willing to compromise on that, this area. It will bring money to the area, student money, so they, when they've got it, they get their loans, but they will spend money in the air. And also, there's always been an issue with going from what will be the new shopping centre, the old shopping centre, bringing that footfall up the Walworth Road to East Street. This just bridges that bit of gap there and starts to bridge that gap between the new shopping centre to the East Street, and will bring the community and residents down through the footfall. I was glad to hear, and it was going to be one of my points, but I was glad to hear that the developer is in consultation with Pembroke House, and seems like they're going to do the fit out costs. That was one of my main concerns, that for a charity organisation putting the fit out costs of something like this to a standard extremely high, to be hundreds of thousands. Glad to hear the developer has made a commitment along those lines, working through the council.
30 seconds.
So generally, that's it, and I won't use the last 30 seconds up to we can get on with the meeting.
Thank you very much. Questions to Councillor Merrill? Councillor Cumbo.
Thank you, Councillor Merrill. It's really good to hear from you and to get those precious 30 seconds back. I have a question about the massing. You did mention the light impacts, but the other primary negative comment was about the massing. Do you have any concerns about that, or is there anything you'd like to say to put it into context in terms of the area?
Well, as you know, the area is being heavily developed at the moment, or has been for a few years going through here. Being the main high street, and I've noticed that the developer has considered that and has done step back from the main side, so that will, from the street, it won't feel so dominating. You are going to, unfortunately, central London, to get the capacity we need to make these developments stack up, you are going to unfortunately have massing of this scale. But the improvements outweigh the negatives, I believe, on this front.
Thank you. Any further questions for Councillor Merrill? Not seeing any. So thank you very much for coming to address us. As I explained earlier, Councillor Merrill, unfortunately, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the meeting. But if you want to wait around, I'm sure we'll be able to let you know the outcome. Otherwise, we can let you know in due course. Thank you. Right. Whilst we're waiting for Councillor Merrill to leave, can I just pick up with officers the question from earlier about the shortfall in place space? We got an answer. Use the microphone.
Yes, 225 square meters is the shortfall. The child yield is 31.2.
Councillor Whittam?
Quite a big shortfall. There's not much space nearby.
Yes, it's a significant shortfall. There is successful park at Elephant Park. It's within walking distance. I think one of the challenges. Would you mind? One of the challenges here was trying to get that onto this constraint site. So with the retention of the existing building, trying to balance the roofs being used for PV, but also green roof, that leaves a certain amount of courtyard. And as the applicant said, part of their community consultation and responses were to have this community outdoor space connected to the living room or the community space in the centre. So there will be opportunities for children to play in that area, although for the purposes of calculating the play space, that wasn't counted, and that is just this area there. The 50 square meters for communal living space is in that area as well, and that's not counted to play space. That's bigger than the 80 square meters. But yeah, that was the rationale behind us as officers being accepting shortfall.
But we haven't got any CGIs of play equipment.
We could add that as a condition for those details to be provided to us before that element of the work starts.
Thank you. And could you remind us just how that compares to play space in the consented scheme? Do we know that?
I don't know, but I don't think it provided no, I won't comment. I don't know.
Thank you. Any further questions for officers? Any views that committee would like to share before we come to? In that case, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move straight to the recommendation we give Councillor Merrill.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair. All I might want to add is that Councillor Whittam asked about local facilities for children to play.
Oh,
further down, further down on Amelia Street is the Pullens Estate. There's a park, which really, I mean, it does mean children have to cross the one road, but it's on the same side of the pavement, literally just the other side of the viaduct is a small park, which is a community park that is very suitable for children playing. And the applicant has provided for 0 to 5s on site. So it's the 5 to 11-year-olds, I suppose, that make their way to that place.
Thank you, Mr. Bedell. That's useful information if anybody caught it. That's just to point out that there's been a lot of money spent on that place. Anyway, I'm going to move, I think, as to a recommendation. Is any further comments? Yeah.
The question I just wanted to raise was there was a point raised by the chair earlier about a potential error with the plan that was shown on the slide at page 28 of the slide. And the question I had just before moving on was whether it was confirmed that this slide shows what's actually one of the plans that's going to be approved today if the recommendation is approved. So just to get that confirmation as to whether committee are approving the plan as seen here, whether it's actually different on the plan to be approved.
Here's the actual proposed plan that shows the larger balcony on the outside.
Oh, that's very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, with that clarification, I'd like to move that we adopt the officer's recommendations as set out in paragraphs 1 to 2 of the report on page 83 of the agenda pack. Firstly, the planning permission is granted subject to the conditions set out in the report and the addendum report, and the applicant entering into an appropriate legal agreement, and details of play space being provided. Secondly, in the event of the requirements of paragraph 1 above not being met by the 26th of November 2025, the Director of Planning Growth be authorised to refuse planning permission if appropriate for the reasons set out in paragraph 251 of the report. So just to clarify that to the item 1 that we have in the report, we're adding that addendum. Is that seconded by Councillor Fula? Thank you very much. I'd like to ask you all how you wish to vote on this. Councillor Whittam.
For, Chair.
Councillor Cumbo.
For, Chair.
Councillor Hicks.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For, Chair.
Councillor Papula.
For, Chair.
I'm Councillor Richard Livingstone. I'm voting for the recommendation. The motion is carried and the application is granted. That brings us to the end of today's business. So thank you all for attending. I hope you all have a safe journey home. Take care.